Hello students, welcome to the Recitals in Depth by Vajiram and Ravi. Here we will be covering the economy and infrastructure December 2024 current affair topics in great detail. The broader themes which we are going to cover are as follows: Indian agriculture, money and banking, public finance, investment and infrastructure, and social development. So stay tuned. Hello students, welcome back to December 2024 topics of the recitals from economy and infrastructure. So in this one we'll be looking at all of the articles, all of the issues that were in the month of December, and here we will be discussing in two different parts. Firstly we'll be covering this one, then we'll be covering the next part of the articles. And in this one, in the very beginning, as usual, I always tell my students to keep your recitals together with the video, so that while reading the articles in the recitals and also hearing the discussion, we'll be having a better understanding of all of the articles comprehensively. So that is where I want to emphasize on double reading and also viewing the discussion. So with this, I'll be starting with the very first article without any delay. Now here recently the government of India recently came up with the banking laws amendment bill. We know that in our country we have so many banking laws. For example's sake, we have the RBI Act, right, of 1935. We have the Banking Regulation Act of 1949. Alongside the same, we also have the SBI Act of 1955. Alongside the same, we also have the various amounts of Banking Companies Act of 1970 and 1980s. Now we have so many amount of regulations and legislations regarding the various sections of our banking, say, infrastructure in the country. And we know that the banking sector of any country is of utmost importance, because it actually underscores the importance of financial oversight in the country. We know that the most important, the overarching banking act is the RBI Act of 1935, where we have so many functions of the RBI outlined within the act. We also have so many other aspects of the RBI, such as its superintendence, its regulation, the various aspects of inflation targeting. All of the things are within the RBI Act. We also have, when we talk about the various banks in the country, the commercial banks, right, the small finance banks and the various other banks. So we have within the purview of Banking Regulation Act of 1949. Now in the comment section, can you let me know some of the significant aspects of Banking Regulation Act? And also when we talk about our largest public sector bank, the SBI, it also has its own act, right? So that is where it actually sometimes leads into so much amount of confusion, regulatory issues when we are dealing with so many acts. That is why recently the Lok Sabha actually passed the Banking Laws Amendment Bill, which actually is trying to streamline and also is trying to harmonize some of the important provisions which are related to banking. And also these particular amendments are in sync with the modern banking regulations worldwide. So that is why India, when it is trying to become a part of the global banking sector, that is where we need also to keep in sync, keep in touch with the latest trends in the same. So that is where brings us to what are the recent changes within the same, right? So firstly, when we talk about the Amendment Bill of 2024, we have this major headers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 points we have to keep in mind when we talk about the various amendments. Let us discuss this one by one. Firstly, when we talk about the cash reserves with the RBI, we definitely mean those, say, cash component of the banks which the banks have to keep with the RBI. This is actually, when we talk about generalizing with this this particular term, we refer to the cash reserve ratio. We know that the banks have to prevent something which we know as bank run. So this is actually a situation when, due to rumors, due to financial crisis, due to such mishappenings in the banking sector, right? All of the people run to the banks and they demand all their money back. So that is why the RBI came with a very clever formula that banks have to keep a certain or X amount of percentage of their total, say, lendable deposits, right, in form of money or in form of cash to be kept safe with the RBI. That is, if any banks are facing some financial issues or say some liquidity crisis, then the RBI can actually intervene in this matter and give some of the money to the depositors, right, who are very panicked in this manner. We have seen these instances in recent times, such as when the Silicon Valley Bank in the US, they were facing some issues. So that was a scenario of the bank run. So that is where we understand we have a provision of keeping cash reserves with the RBI with respect to the commercial banks, right? It has did what? It has tried to redefine fortnight. That is the term fortnight, right? Earlier, according to the, current, say, scenarios, it is actually defined from the period of Saturday to the second following Friday. Right now, the things have been made much more clearer. That is, this duration has to be from the 1st of each month to 15th of each month, right? This is the fortnight period. And also, when we talk about the next period, it is from 16th to the last day of that particular month. So during this particular period, the RBI will be calculating the amount of cash reserves that it is having with itself, right? So this is how it is trying to streamline, right, with reference to both scheduled and non-scheduled banks whenever they are keeping their reserves with the RBI. So it is making the rules much more clearer instead of Fridays and Saturdays and so on. Okay. When we talk about the next one, right, it is concerning about the directors. It is concerning about the directors with reference to cooperative banks. So the first thing about it is that according to present rules, according to the present, say, provisions, the directors of the, say, cooperative banks, they cannot serve more than 8 consecutive years. Now this has been increased to 10 years, right? So these particular directors of cooperative banks, they can serve for a period of 10 consecutive years. So obviously this is actually making the, say, a management of the bank much more better, because increasing the tenure of the directors will be having a better managerial effect on these particular banks. Also, when we talk about, say, the cooperative banks, right, according to the current rules, the director of one bank cannot serve as within the board of directors of another bank except RBI appointed directors, right? Now this is all about management of the banks. Now, according to the recent rules, what has been cited is that it has been allowing the directors of cooperative banks to also serve as on the board of a state cooperative bank. So with reference to, say, these directors, they now can participate at the central cooperative banks and also at the state cooperative banks for better managerial, say, allocations, and also bringing the expertise from the central cooperative banks to the state cooperatives and even at the lower levels. So this is actually what has been done. Without going into further details, we'll be moving on to the next one. The next one is also, kind of incentivizing people to have better stakes in the banking sector. That is, according to recent, or say according to current provisions, what we have to understand is that if you have a substantial interest in any company, that means this particular term is actually talking about those particular people, such as investors in a particular bank, who have a substantial interest, such as voting power of that particular bank, or say voting power within the board of the bank, right, or taking some various crucial strategic decisions for the banks. So that particular thing is known as the substantial interest in various companies, and here in this case they are the banks. So earlier the rule was that if anyone would have held shares, right, or say worth more than 5 lakh rupees or 10% of the company's paid up capital, that is 5 lakh rupees or 10% or more, right, so they would have actually had a very substantial interest in the banks, right? This is with reference to their paid up capital. So that has to be a minimum of 2 crores to have a substantial interest in those companies. Also, when we talk about the next amendment, it is about the various nomination rules for deposits and lockers. We know that in a bank we keep deposits, right? And also in banks we keep various precious items of ourselves in the lockers too. Now, in event of any unfortunate incident or happening, right, within the family of some person, maybe for example in matters of death, so what would be the, say, ownership status of those depositors of, say, of those deposits or the lockers? So this is with reference to that. So with reference to, say, the current rule, we have to understand that one single or joint depositor can appoint only one nominee, right? Earlier we could have only have one nominee to be appointed here, but we have to understand that this provision is not very, say, customer friendly for that particular person, because that particular person can have more than one nominees, right? So that particular person can actually appoint multiple nominees with reference to their accounts or, say, the deposits. So that is why this particular thing has been increased to 4. And the shares of deposit, for example, in event of death, so this will be, say, with reference to the choices and the preference of that particular depositor. Now, what are the detailed choices and how the particular nominees will be getting their individual shares out of their deposits and their locker belongings is something that we do not want to go too much deeper, because we are not becoming bankers, we are becoming, future IAS officers. So that is where we have to keep in mind that now the banks can give more and more amount of leverage to the depositors, right? So that is actually increasing the flexibility for them, right? Okay. Next, it is about settlement of unclaimed accounts. Now we know that if someone has not say withdrawn their deposits for a long period of time, what will the banking system do with that? So generally we have, for example, with reference to deposits, with reference to shares, with reference to various bonds. Generally what happens in the current provision, there is something which we know as Investor Education and Protection Fund, right? So this is where those unclaimed deposits go into if you do not claim it for a period of 7 years, right? So if after 7 years there is no claimants, so it will be going to this particular, say, fund. And this Investor Education and Protection Fund, it is actually investing all those unclaimed deposits, all those unclaimed funds into spreading awareness amongst various investors. For example, say you have heard about various scams which are happening regarding the financial sectors, right? And the government must be definitely doing something for that. Due to which, if you read the Hindu and the Indian Express and, say, other major newspapers too, you will be finding that there are many advertisements within the same to protect your deposits, right? To protect your financial assets. So those advertisements are done with the money which has been accrued under this particular fund. Apart from this, there are many other awareness generation activities that this fund does. So this is a good thing, right? People who are, say, not claiming their deposits, so the country must be using their money for some useful purposes. So now what happened, earlier we used to have these deposits, right? Now this scope has been increased to include, say, various shares, right? Various shares where the dividends are unclaimed, right? It is also including those bonds, right? It is also including those actually bonds where the interest is unpaid or the redemption amount has not been claimed for around 7 years, right? And also those shares of funds which have been transferred to the IEPF, right? So those particular funds can also now be claimed, right? So if we look at all of the important provisions, it is generally about increasing the flexibility and ease of doing banking in the country, right? And finally, when we talk about the auditor remuneration, so right, earlier what happened, the RBI used to fix the fees, the charges of the various auditors with reference to various audit inspections in the banking sector. Now what happens? The charges and everything were fixed by the RBI earlier. Now the banks will be fixing, or say the banks have been given the banks have been given the, say, a power to set those charges, to set those amount of, say, payments to be made to the auditors. So also this is giving much more room to the banks to decide their own charges. So in a nutshell, these were all the important amendments that were important for our examination, right? Any more details, right? Any more further details are not important. We are here to become IAS officers, not bankers, right? So that is where brings us to this question. You solve this as usual. I will be providing you various questions. You please let me know the answers so that I can check whether you are following the discussion and also reading the recitals alongside. So let me know the answer in the comment section, right? So we'll be moving on to the next one now. Now students, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is now thinking of whether we can tinker or change the base year of the consumer price index in the country. Recently there was another news on how we can actually also change the base year and also various other things with reference to the wholesale price index in the country. Now you know that the CPI is actually a very important indicator of the prevailing trend of inflation rate in the country. And when we talk about, say, the inflation rate, it is actually the rate at which there is a persistent increase in the general price level across various goods and services in the particular country, so in India, in a period of time, right? When we talk about CPI, please note that WPI includes only goods, right? Only goods, whereas CPI is actually including both goods and services. Inflation which is taking place at the market level, right, which is at at the various retail shops and the various other, say, shopping malls where we go and shop. It is the inflation that we see there. WPI is that amount of inflation that we see at the wholesale markets, right? So this is what we have to distinguish at the very beginning. And when we talk about, say, the very basics of CPI, we'll be starting with this amount of list. Now this list is very important, right? It will be helping in our prelims examination and also for understanding the discussion further. See, when we talk about, say, the CPI, it is nothing but the amount of inflation with reference to the current year and the base year. That is, we have to understand that the formula of CPI is the cost of various goods and services, as you can see. Costs of various goods and services, right? Costs of goods and services in the current year, right? Divided by the same with reference to a base year. In this case, the base year is 2011, right? When we talk about the CPI, the base year is 2012. Right? So the base year 2012, so with reference to the prices of all these commodities which were in 2012, if I can put it in one box and I can measure what is the price right now, right? So I will be multiplying it by 100. So that will be my amount of CPI presently. Now when we talk about, say, how government measures this, government sends this various officials to the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. They will be sending its officials to all the retail markets, to most of the retail markets across to actually find the, say, amount of inflation across various products here. As you can see here, right, we have, say, classes or, say, classifications of goods and services such as food and beverages, right, pan, tobacco and intoxicants, clothing and footwear, housing, fuel and light, miscellaneous, and here within the miscellaneous we have some services also such as health, education and so on. So these are the amount of goods and services which the people, or say you and me, uses on a daily basis, right? And inflation is considering those items, and say CPI index is considering those items which we commonly use, generally use on a day-to-day basis, right? So that is where we have to keep this thing in mind. And for our prelims examination, it is very, very important that we also keep the weightages, right? When we talk about the weightages, the combined weightages of the various groups, right? So these are the things where we have to keep in mind, right? So there can be questions based on ascending and descending order of these particular items, correct? Now, when we talk about the various types of CPI in the country, firstly, we have CPI for industrial workers, right? Consumer Price Index for the industrial workers. Now, this is actually a very important measure of inflation, which is used to determine what should be the wages of various industrial workers, mainly in the formal sector, for deciding their wages, salaries, and emoluments. So here the base year is 2016. To calculate the CPI IW, the base year is 2016. And also when we talk about, say, the CPI agricultural workers, the base year is 1986 to 87. Now this is actually the CPI agricultural workers, which is talking about the various amounts of the inflation which has taken place in the rural areas with reference to the rural and agricultural laborers. Right? So this is actually their own cost of living with reference to agricultural workers and with reference to industrial workers. Right? So here the base year is 1986 to 87. And also we have the CPI combined. So this is actually the CPI, or say the normal amount of CPI which we calculate by taking into factor the inflation in rural areas and urban areas. Now in this one I want to highlight all of you something. If you can look at this particular items and weightages again, if you can look at the same here, with reference to rural areas, we attach more importance to food and beverages than with reference to urban areas. Now there is a reason for this, because we understand that the general income in the rural areas are much lower than the urban areas, and that is why proportion of income that is spent by the rural people are actually more than what the urban area people spend on. So that is why we have higher weightage for food and beverages in the rural areas. This is a very important thing that even a prelims can ask you this, right? So that is where you have to keep in mind. Also, the various divergences or say differences of weightages between rural and urban areas with reference to all the community, say particular baskets, as you can see here, correct? So this is what I wanted to convey in this particular information. And also when we talk about, say, why CPI is a very important measure, we have to understand that the CPI is used for inflation targeting, right? It is used for inflation targeting by the RBI. We know that in India, we have to keep the inflation under control within this particular band, that is 4 plus 2, plus minus 2%. That means inflation can be a minimum of 2% to a maximum of 6%. So this is the range of safe inflation within the country. If inflation is, say, below 2% or higher than 6%, then RBI definitely have to take some actions, right? So that is why the RBI relies on the data with reference to the CPI, right? And also when we talk about, say, the other amounts of importance, with reference to CPI, it helps in wage adjustments too, right? For example, if the inflation is around 5%, 6%, so it also gives the various private companies, the government agencies, an indication of how, say, higher the inflation is. Accordingly, the salaries and the wages can be adjusted. Also, when we talk about the government, it helps in policy formulation, right? Because CPI and the various data which are released monthly, it gives a signal to the government of India, right? And also to the RBI to take various policies regarding inflation control. This was highlighted quite frequently during the COVID pandemic, when we witnessed high amounts of inflation in the country, and the government was also swift in tackling the same, right? And finally, obviously, it also helps us in analyzing the macroeconomical indicators along with GDP, along with, say, various amounts of export-import data. Inflation data is also very, very important, correct? So this is why, we have to understand the economic significance of the CPI in our country. Now, we have to understand there are some issues with reference to the CPI in the country, right? When we talk about, say, what are the changes which have been proposed in, say, computing the CPI? Firstly, we have to understand one thing, that the base year is 2012. Don't you think that we are in 2024 right now? Right? And there are so many baskets of goods and services which are calculated as a part of the CPI, right? So for example, this is the basket which was there in 2012, and this is the basket which is now in 2024. And obviously the economy over a period of around 12 years, it went through various structural changes, right? For example, over a period of time, our incomes increased. Over a period of time, the infrastructure at least improved a little, right? We have a new set of challenges with reference to climate change and so many other aspects, right? Economy also with reference to various employment aspects, the say various say aspects of crucial employment data, and also the COVID pandemic. So due to various things, we actually witnessed a structural change. So don't you think there would be some changes in this list of items that we generally include, as we have seen in the previous one, right? Such as food and beverages and the various food, clothing, education services and so on. So definitely there should be some new baskets or new additions which must be factored into this particular CPI, that the present CPI that we are calculating, right? Also, when we talk about, say, the amount of, say, particular weightages, this was the first thing, was the first issue with the present one. The second issue is that with reference to the weightages that are assigned to various items such as goods and services in the CPI calculation formula, we have a fixed amount of weightages, right? We have seen for the rural areas, urban areas, we have some weightages. But also, over a period of time, we understand that those weightages, those percentages also must be changing, correct? Because simply, for example, you know, the per capita income, right? The per capita income of Indians has changed over the last 12 years. That is why right now maybe we are buying more and more amount of luxury commodities. Maybe we are buying more of high value items, right? With reference to food, there is a stark, there are many research, there are many studies which show that Indians are right now consuming more high protein items such as meat, such as fish, such as eggs right now. And also we have so many new, say, items with reference to some new vegetables that can be included in the basket, right? So these are some of the weightages that also need to be revised according to various economists, right? And these are actually the most important things. And also when we talk about the recent government say report, right, the government is, right, you know, as always has paid high attention to the public distribution service, right? The public distribution system with reference to distribution of food grains under the National Food Security Act 2013, right? This mandates that 75% of rural India plus 50% of urban India are entitled to right to food, right? So this is right to proper amount of nutrition with reference to the poorest and poorest of our country. So this is with reference to the distribution that we have to keep in mind. Now what happens to the food items and say the various food grains which are distributed under the PDS? So are they included as of now or no? So they were not included. They were actually excluded. Why? Because these things are generally known as transfers in economic language. That means they do not carry any economic activity, right? They do not carry any economic activity with reference to the distribution of food grains to various populations, because these are generally given to the poorest of people at free or at very subsidized cost. Now this is actually what we have to understand. Right now the MOSPI is recommending that we should be including the PDS, or say the PDS services within the context of CPI. The MOSPI is telling that we can include them by fixing their prices zero, but assigning a particular weightage or say percentage, right? That means, for example, if we have the food and beverages component at, for example, say at 40%, so let us also fix a certain amount of weightages of the PDS items as a part of this food and beverages section, because it does not make any sense to exclude that as a form of transfer, because obviously in economic sense that is a transfer payment, but for our inflation calculation we have to take into consideration the heavily used items, generally used items for inflation calculation purposes. So that is why, due to various technical, due to various statistical measures and also considerations, it is important that we capture the entire inflation scenario in the country and not leave items such as this, which are very, very important for the say economic supply chain or say agricultural supply chain. So that is why we can include the PDS items at zero price with reference to a particular weightage in the basket, right? And experts say that this can actually lower the headline inflation. Headline inflation is actually in layman terms, it is actually the overall inflation. That is, for example, we have seen all the weight, baskets of goods, right? Whatever the inflation is taking place across all of the baskets, that is known as headline inflation. Now, within the headline inflation, if I deduct some volatile components such as fuel and food, right, we'll be getting something which we know as core inflation. Now, experts say that if we affix a zero value to the PDS items, the inflation with reference to headline will be coming down, right? So this is what the experts say, and obviously we can understand this by applying our say common economical sense, that if we attach the value as zero, it will be decreasing the price of that particular matter. So these are the various issues and also the solutions that they're proposing, right? Firstly, the base year can be changed to 2024. Secondly, the weightages of various items, they must be changed, keeping in mind the structural and economical change that has happened over the 12 years, and also inclusion of the PDS, right? So that is where you have to keep in mind. And also when we talk about how to include the PDS items, it is actually with reference to the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey 2022-2023 data, right? So this is with reference to the latest amount of capture of consumption expenditure survey, which is highly important source of data for looking into the various items that we commonly buy from the goods and the services market, right? So these were all the things that I thought of discussing, and with reference to this, you let me know what is the answer of the same in the comments below. Also give me explanations as to why some statements are wrong here, right? So moving on to the next one. The Department of Consumer Affairs at Ladakh recently launched a very innovative portal. While this portal was actually in force in most of the states, but recently at Ladakh, we actually tried to have all of the states at one board. That means all of the states right now have this e-Dakhil portal. Right now, this will also be renamed or converted to e-Jagriti. E-Jagriti. And if you can understand from the name itself, Jagriti and Dakhil, it is about a consumer grievance portal. Now, we have to understand there are so many e-governance initiatives. There are so many e-governance initiatives that the government of India is taking right now for better amount of e-governance or governance in the country via electronic mode. And also, these things increase the transparency and accountability of the government over a period of time. Now, let me tell you how this portal is working. For example, if you're having any consumer aspects or some amount of complaints regarding some company, or if you think that you have been cheated by a company, you can straight away go to this portal, right? And you can actually, with reference to your case status, history, judgments, and also case number, you can find all your case details. You can track, you can register the various redress, grievances that you have on a particular unified portal, right? And actually, we have to understand this portal was launched in September 2020, right, by the National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission. And this was during the COVID-19 when there were high amount of consumer complaints piling up. And also during 2020, we have to keep in mind that we as a country started shifting our economic affairs, governance affairs on the digital board. I mean on a digital platform. Also, when we talk about, say, the education courses and so on, so those things were having a high amount of focus on online architecture. So that is where we understand is the first background of this particular, say, platform. So in this particular platform, it becomes very much easy, right? Because it is inexpensive, it is hassle-free for you to go onto this website and just register a complaint. Also, after you have registered, you can keep a track with your case status and various other details in this particular, say, platform, right? And also, when we talk about, the government is also launching this e-Jagriti portal, which will be also including the e-Jagriti portal. This will be also including the dispute resolution, say, mechanisms. This can be including the mediation or the various ADR or alternate dispute resolution mechanisms between the consumers and the various, say, companies against whom there are some consumer complaints, right? So this is actually trying to automate and digitize the entire process, and hence aiding the mission statement of Digital India and also furthering e-governance in the country. So with reference to discussion, this was quite straightforward. So you let me know what is the answer of the same in the comments below. Recently, a 26-member committee under the chairmanship of Vishwanath Goldar, a prominent economist in the country, advisory committee on national accounts statistics has been formed to recalculate or, say, propose the new base year for calculating our GDP. Now, here I'll be first starting with the concept of base year. For example, say in 2020, for simplicity's sake, our entire GDP was 1000, right? Now in 2021, obviously our GDP is bound to increase. We have so much amounts of, say, industrial production, we have a very huge population, due to which we have increasing amount of GDP. Maybe the GDP has increased to 1100 rupees, right? But when we talk about 2022, the GDP increased to, further by 50 rupees, further going on, right? The GDP increased to 1200 rupees. When we talk about comparison or, say, the growth between each years, right, we generally talk about, say, the present year and the last year. So we calculate the percentage. We found out that what is the growth with reference to the last year. But does this reflect the real picture? No, right? Because we have to fix a permanent base year, and then we have to calculate whether this particular picture is reflecting the actual growth or not, right? We have to compare every year with reference to a base year to actually see whether the increase each year is justified with reference to a year in the past, right? And now, how will we select a year in the past? Definitely that particular year must be a year where there should not be any major amount or high amount of inflation or no economic uncertainty. It should be a year where we have good amount of GDP growth, we have strong economic fundamentals such as our exports and imports are quite balanced, we do not have high amount of currency depreciation. So base year is calculating or, say, looking into considerations of stable economic fundamentals. Fundamentals are your GDP growth figures, it is your inflation levels, it is your currency depreciation or appreciation. So all of the things must be very stable. It is actually a year where we have had a good year, right? We do not have, say, too much of fiscal deficit. So that is where we have strong economic fundamentals. So as of the last, say, series data, so this was just an example, right? As of the last series, which was modified in 2015, the base year was last modified in 2015. The base year is 2011-12. With reference to our GDP, whenever we compare 2018 GDP, 2020 GDP, 2024 GDP growth, we always link to a particular year in the past. So whatever the goods and services prices was prevailing and 2011 and 12. So those prices are taken into consideration if you are looking into GDP growth in the subsequent years, right? So this is what we have to keep in mind when we talk about the basic, say, base year concepts. We are now thinking to change the base year from 2011 to 2022-23. Why? Because as discussed earlier, we know that economy usually goes to a structural change. When we are discussing that CPI topic, I talked about how due to, say, employment conditions, due to various sectoral, say, growth, for example, agricultural sector progress, industrial sector progress, due to various skills of our population, due to better amount of education and health, right? We need to upgrade ourselves. Whenever we try to compare, right, between various peoples in our lives, we always compare with a better person, right? And when we attain that better person status, we always try to compare with some much more better individual with ourselves, right? So that is what it is all about. So in 2015 we thought, okay, we can compare with reference 2011-12, but in 2024 we are thinking that okay, 2011-12 is gone, 12 years have gone, we now have to upgrade ourselves, right? We have to come to the 2022-23 years, and that is where we can see a better comparison, because over a period of time so many things have changed in the country, right? Such as a structural change, right? Our country definitely has become much more stronger than it was in 2011 and 12. So these are the things which are keeping our economists busy when it comes to the determination of the base year and whether we should be changing or not. And when we talk about some factual data, some factual information, the first official estimates of national income was published in 1956. Right, and they were prepared by the Central Statistical Organization with the base year of 1948 to 49. So this is something which we can keep in mind. And when we talk about this topic, we have another question for all of you. You please let me the answer of the same in the comments below. The Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution recently launched the Ann Chakra and the Scan portal for better amount of functioning of the public distribution system in the country. And here, this is something which we need to look from a government scheme perspective. So we do not have any conceptual understanding here. We just need to follow up the various facts here. So this is actually, Anna Chakra is a public distribution system supply chain optimization tool. We know that the government procures the food grains at MSP from the farmers, right? This goes to the Food Corporation of India. Later, after transportation, after so many amount of supply chain, it reaches the state governments, and finally the state governments are actually the main stakeholder who are responsible for distributing the food grains to the people. So finally they are distributed to the people under the National Food Security Act. So this is how the entire supply chain looks at in a very brief nutshell. Now this Ann Chakra is a portal which is trying to optimize the entire supply chain, because there are many issues within storage, transportation, distribution, even disbursing the grains at the ration shops. Some corruption scandals are included. So these are all the things that is trying to be optimized. It has been developed by the Department of Food Public Distribution in collaboration with the World Food Program and the Foundation for Innovation and Technological Transfer and IIT Delhi. All of these four organizations are important because UPSC asks questions with reference to who were the founding organizations of this particular initiative. Now here, this particular program is a very innovative one. Since we have one IIT involved here, definitely there will be some technical expertise involved too. So we are using various complex algorithms. We are using coding to actually identify what will be a particular optimal route or the base route possible for distribution of food supply chain or food grains across entire country. For example, there may be a village in the country which is extremely remote, right? And what happens, the state government usually directly tries to transport various food grains to this village. but there can be some amount of say investment done say around the village or in the village, where there can be a supply chain which can be say installed, or maybe there is an adjacent village here which has a particular go down by the FCI which can store the food grains and then distribute it. Now all of the food grains, you say the food corruption of India go downs are actually linked digitally online, right? So this particular portal, what it is trying to do, it is trying to find all the nearest go downs, all the say suppliers and distributor transporters, by actually helping them on a particular board or on a particular platform using complex algorithms to calculate what will be the fastest route in which the state government can distribute the food grains to the villages, even the remotest of remote of villages. So that is where this particular initiative is increasingly becoming more and more important to be adopted in our PDS system. Now, when we talk about this particular initiative, cannot we use such initiatives to write excellent answers? In mains, there will be 10 more people writing answers with you in the examination. You have to beat every one of them. How to do those things? Because you have to understand, in UPSC examination, particularly in mains, you have to write good initiatives in the paper. And in the recitals, there are so many initiatives, so many say public-private partnerships also, as you can see here. Also, academia, prominent IIT is participating in this particular thing to give a technical push here. So we can always write or say use this particular portals or say initiatives as best practice, right? Best practice cases. So let us include them in our class notes, in our personal notes, to have that better amount of recollection during the examination, right? So do not forget to do that. Also, when we talk about say the ration shops, we have discussed about the supply chain, that is distribution by the state governments. When we talk about the ration shops, we hear about so many corruption and scandals, right? So if we can tag the ration shops, we can actually look into what are the supplies that they have received over the last month, over this month, and what were the amount of food grains that were distributed to the people finally, so we can have a proper amount of transparency within this operation. And also the state government can be having a better amount of monitoring also at the at that particular level. So this is how we can have this particular oversight. It is also integrated with Freight Operations Information System portal of the Indian Railways too, via the Unified Logistics Interface platform. So we are also tagging in the railways too, right? And also it is integrated with PM Gati Shakti platform, which is mapping the geolocations of the fair price shops and the warehouses across the state. So you can understand, so the government has actually not left any stone unturned to help say the success running of this particular platform. Now this was one initiative. The another initiative is known as Scan Portal. Now, the Scan Portal is actually aiming to modernize the PDS. Now, the full form of the same is actually Subsidy Claim Application for National Food Security Act. Subsidy claim. That means there are so many stakeholders who are involved, right? The transporters are there, the warehouses, owners are there, the godowns are there. There are so many distribution networks, and even there are ration shops involved who actually get subsidies from the government to operate the National Food Security Act, right? So the government of India and the various government authorities, they give various subsidies to operationalize and to actually say have a better functioning of the various ration shops in the country, or say the overall functioning of this particular say public distribution system. So that is why sometimes the people do not get their subsidy on time by the government, and that is why we feel that there are some instances of corruption, inefficiencies in distribution at the at the lowest levels. So this is actually to say a tag or claim that subsidies in a timely manner. So, and also this is to automate the task force and the subsidy distribution to the people. So this portal has to be linked with subsidies, correct? So this is all that you have to keep in mind, And keeping those things in mind, you let me know what is the answer in the comments below of this particular MCQ. Recently, the National Highway Authority of India has done an excellent job of giving the performance rating of various concessionaires or contractors involved in the national highway development. We know that whenever we go to any highway or we actually use the highways for our transportation purposes, there are so many issues such as the roads can be improper, or say a particular road can be present at an accident prone area. So to solve those matters, there is a contractor rating system which is in force right now, because we understand, there are various, say, operators or say highway contractors who take their highway tenders, but they do not supply good raw materials, which result in a deterioration of the quality of roads over a period of time. Also, financial and contractual, say, performance right now is to be a parameter of this particular, say, comprehensive system, which will be taking into account various things over, say, past 5 years. Now this is looking into two things. This contractor rating system is looking into pavement condition index. 80% of the focus must be on this. And also there is NHAI 1 app, which is a very important and a very user friendly app which we all can use to flag any, say, issues on the highway. So based on this app, there is also defect rectification compliance on this particular app, which will be looking into various defects in the highways. So here 20% score will be given, and based on these two scores, if we get around 70% or less, then that contractor will be pulled on their with reference to their performance and the various activities that they have done in a particular highway, right? So a score less than 70% is actually indicating non-performers, right? And how this is all done, for example, when we talk about, say, how this pavement condition index is calculated, it is actually employing vehicles like this, right? These are known as network survey vehicles. If you can look at this vehicle, it is looking into a cracked road, right? It is looking into a cracked road. It has some specialized laser modules, right? It is actually including the laser crack measurement system to survey the various roads and map the various cracks. It can be with reference to various cracks and the various defects, as you can see here, right? All of these things will be scanned properly, with reference to these vehicles by using these vehicles. And this is how the pavement condition, index is calculated. So this is exactly how we have to keep in mind how this index is done and how the contractors will be rated, and that is how future tenders and future responsibilities will be given to them. Now with reference to this, whatever we have discussed, you let me know what is the answer of the same in the comments below. Recently, the Department of Consumer Affairs has developed the National Legal Metrology Portal, right? And if you can see, this is the online website of the same. Now in this particular portal, the things are very simple. When we go to any shop, we look at the weighing machines, right? For example, if I ask the shopkeeper, give me 500 grams of paneer. So the shopkeeper will be maybe slicing 450 grams of paneer and will be keeping on the weighing scale. It will be showing 500 grams only. How it is possible? Because maybe there is a possibility that the shopkeeper has manipulated something, or say manipulated the coding, or manipulated some weighing say device in the weighing machine. So this is something which happens to you, which happens to me, which happens to every one of us. So with reference to any weights and measures and standards, there is always a scope of manipulation by the shopkeepers. So that is why the government is taking a very important initiative here, that is known as e-MAP, right? e-MAP is the portal, as you can see here. So this is actually trying to set the standards, proper standards regarding metrology in the country. Now when we talk about legal metrology, we have to look into some things from the recitals itself. We talk about metrology as a science of measurement. Legal metrology is applicable of legal requirements to measure, to actually measurements and measuring devices. For example, see, if I tell that there is 1 meter of, say, a rope. Now, how can I define it as 1 meter? There has to be something legal provisions or legal laws, right, which is backing up this particular, say, definition of 1 meter, 2 meters, 1 centimeter, 5 centimeter, 1 kilograms, 50 kilograms. So there must be some comparisons. There must be a legal backing of this. Otherwise, everyone will be telling, okay, this is my 1 kilogram, this is your 1 kilogram. So that is how there can be some discrepancies at the consumer level. So that is why, the objective of legal metrology is to ensure public guarantee from, the point of view of security and accuracy of the weight, and also the value of money that consumers are paying for various goods and services, right? With reference to the paneer example, you can understand you would want 500 grams of paneer according to the money you have paid for that 500 grams. You would not want any less, any more, right? So that is what it is trying to establish here, correct? And when we talk about India, we have a legal metrology act of 2009, which was actually passed to establish and enforce the standards of weights and measures. It also regulates the trade and commerce for goods which are sold or distributed by weights and measures. The Department of Legal Metrology falls under a DOCA, as we discussed, and we have to talk about, say, when this act, it has replaced the Standards of Weights and Measures Act and Standards of Weights and Measures Acts of 1976 and 1985, and the state and the state union territory, this is very important for all of us, have been given the authority to enforce the act and the rules. So if at all in prelims examination you see that there is a statement that the central government has been given the authority to enforce Legal Metrology Act 2009, it would be a wrong one, because generally these things are protected, enforced by the states at the ground level, right? So at the end of the day, it will be the state governments. And when we talk about this particular act, it is about so many things. Firstly, it is about regulatory authority. It is actually, with reference to Department of Consumer Affairs under Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, where we have a particular, legal metrology division which is supervising the act across the country. While it is supervising, the implementation is done by the UTs and the states, right? Also, when we talk about the various scopes, so where we apply these laws, right, there has to be some devices. So generally, it is with reference to various medical devices, right? It is with reference to devices such as weighing scales, blood pressure monitors, glucometers, right? Also, when we talk about, say, various other weighing instruments, so they are also being, applied here. This particular act is dealing with registration and licensing processes, right, such as manufacturing registration, approval of model, stamping, right? It is also looking into labeling requirements. When we look at some scales and, say, weighing machine, we always look at some labeling beside that. So who is proposing that labeling and everything? This particular act, right? So with reference to any errors or anything with reference to verification, everything is mentioned. Acha. Now, if some company is not adhering to the standards, what will be happening to them? They have to be complying with the standards with reference to Indian standards specified under various measurements, or there will be various, say, enforcement actions taken by them. Also, to ensure that the companies are ensuring all of these things, we have inspections and regular audits, right, where the non-compliance will be resulting in penalties, and also sometimes the licenses can also be revoked back, right? Also, when we talk about consumer protection, the complaints, grievance, redressal, and also with reference to spreading awareness, everything is a part of this particular act. So this is our background. Now, when we talk about this particular portal of EMAP, we have to understand, right now, every state governments have their own portal earlier, right? For example, if we take the case of, say, West Bengal, it would have their own website for this national legal metrological weight, standard, registration, and so on. So right now, this will be a central portal. So this will be a central portal where it is much more easier for various companies to get registrations and various compliance audits and various other aspects from the portal directly, right? So it is actually with reference to say enforcement of offences, compounding of offences where the state governments were not able to do properly. That is where the central government stepped in, and it is actually looking into this matter, with reference to say any grievance addressal, any compliance issues. Now this particular portal will be using the various provisions of the act here, right? So with reference to traders and industries, this portal will be minimizing the compliance burdens, reducing the paperwork, and it will be adhering to the National Legal Metrological Act here, right? So here for the various amounts of consumers, it will be actually be spreading awareness of the various weights and standards in the market and in the various aspects here, where the say unruly producers, they will be caught, they will be labeled on the website here or on the portal here, because this is a centralized database, right? This will be eliminating the stakeholders to say register on multiple state say portals, right? So this is actually where all of the say particular metrology companies will be registering or say will be present on this portal, on one portal itself, and the consumers will be better aware of who are complying with whom, right? So it will be helping them in this matter. Also, when we talk about the government, right, we have seen that the state governments were not able to implement it properly, right? They were having their own multiple portals, and also if for example I am one person who is trying to invest in a new company which is setting up say metrology organization. So for example, I am manufacturing a medical device. So if I have to open one medical device company, right, I have to open it Telangana separately, I have to open in Gujarat separately by obtaining licenses and so on. So for the governments, it will be easier for the central government and also for the state government to have only one website, one portal for everything. Registration will be there, every particular compliance burden will be there itself, paperwork will be reduced. At the end of the day, government will be having a better amount of record and also higher amount of compliance with reference to various laws and say bylaws under this particular act, right? So this is exactly what we have to keep in mind when we talk about this portal, right? So according to our discussion, now you let me know what is the answer of this in the comments below. Now recently the Union Government and the Asian Development Bank has signed on a $98 million loan to boost and improve the horticulture sector in our country. Now we'll be starting with the very basics, right? We'll be starting with the basics given in the recitals, right? So we'll be first understanding what is horticulture. It is a science of plant agriculture, right? It is the branch of plant agriculture that deals with garden crops, generally fruits, vegetables, and ornamental plants too. It is derived from the Latin word of garden and cola, to cultivate. While these things are important for our general understanding, right, we have to understand the significance of horticulture. See, when we talk about say fruits, vegetables, right, we know that these are much more of higher value, right, with reference to rice or wheat and so on. So these are of high value. For example, if we talk about apples, oranges, so generally the profit margin in horticulture items are much more higher, right, with reference to the food grains that we see or the pulses that we see. But also we have to understand they are much more labor intensive and also generate employment throughout the year. We have say for rice and wheat and various other grains and pulses, we have some seasonal limitations. But with reference to fruits and vegetables, we know we get some vegetables which are available throughout the year, some vegetables or fruits which are seasonal in nature. So generally the employment generation or say the employment aspect here is much more stable, right? Also when we talk about horticulture sector, it is extremely important when we talk about the food processing industry, because be it the potato chips, tomato ketchup or burgers and so on, we have, right, say the most important ingredient as horticulture products, right? We have their use in food processing industry, pharmaceutical sector, perfumes, cosmetics, chemical industry and whatnot, right? So also when we talk about our exports, so it is also a good source of foreign exchange, right? The production in 2023-24 is estimated to be around 350 million tons, right? Which has actually decreased, around by 0.9% over the previous year, that is 2022-23. But when we talk about some other data, right? When we talk about the food grains, we know that the farmers are getting MSP. But with reference to the, say, horticulture crops, they do not get any MSP. As you can see here, rice, wheat, cotton, sugarcane, the support on the output side, that is on the farmer's output side, is MSP, right? And when we talk about various subsidies with reference to seeds, fertilizers and so on, government also gives fertilizer on them. So what we understand, the total support that is given to the farmers here is actually very, very high, right? Is very high. But when we talk about the growth, it is of around 1.4%, over a span of 10 years from 2011 to 2020-21. When we talk about cereals, we have, some MSP for some, crops and so on. But when we talk about fruits and vegetables, which is the main thing that I'm talking about here, we do not get any MSP for them, right? We also get some amount of, subsidies with reference to, input. For example, some good varieties of seeds with reference to potato seeds, with reference to tomato seeds and so on, right? So we have those things. On the other side, when we talk about, the total support, because we do not get MSP, but we get some input support, we have some small, support from the government. But even if the government is giving small support, if we can see, look at the growth with reference to, pulses, oil seeds, cereals and rice with sugarcane. The growth is, more than double. So this means that we have higher amount of potential for the horticultural crops in the country. And in your answers in the agricultural, section, always do recommend, if you want to give some recommendations, how we can improve or double our farmers' income, you must be mentioning that apart from, multi-cropping, apart from natural farming, organic farming, and various other important recommendations such as, fertilizer control, various initiatives such as, repealed farm laws and their provisions of agriculture marketing, contract farming. There are so many recommendations we have, right? This is one more recommendation that is of crop diversification. Farmers right now cannot be dependent on only one crop, that is rice, wheat, sugarcane and so on. And while these are actually high value, but these are much more higher value and they fetch much more prices according to geographical locations in the country. And India is a country, that is home to so many geographical locations and also, regions. So that is why we have a high potential of growing fruits and vegetables, which have reflected growth of much more, double the growth of, these items such as cereals, food grains and so on. That is why when we talk about crop diversification, which is a repeated theme in the mains PYQs, we have to promote horticulture, right? We also have to promote dairy and other livestock, as you can see here, right? There is little institutional support through cooperative marketing of milk and so on. But when we talk about MSP, we do not have a MSP here. Input subsidy is also quite less, right? But look at the growth. Look at fish. We do not have anything here, right? But see, look at the growth. So this is actually telling you the, potential of the agricultural sector in the near future. So this is where our farmers might be, focusing on. So it's better you have a note of this entire table in your notes, right? Also, when we look at, the other data, we can see how over a period of time, with the latest data from 2014, right? While the area, as you can see, the area under cultivation of horticulture crop has roughly remained the same, right? If you can see 23.4, right? 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So roughly it has increased by around 5, right? That is 5 million hectares. But it has jumped from 281 to 355. And also when we talk about this area, this is nothing in comparison to the area we have for food grain production. So if we can diversify, we can have the double and triple of the figures. Also when we talk about, the food grain production and the horticulture production caught up with food grain production. And when we talk about production in million tons, it is right now higher than the food grains right? So, and also let us keep in mind that the area under horticulture is much less than the area under food grain. So these are the trends which I'm not showing you for anything. I'm telling you to note these things down in your notes to show the viability and say the potential of horticulture sector in the country, due to which the government has so many schemes, right? Mission on horticultural development, mega food parks, food processing industries promotions, and so on. So there are so many items, so many schemes. One of this thing is the Atmanirbhar Clean Plant Program, which is a focus in in our discussion right now. So on August 2024, that is last year, the Clean Plant Program under Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture, which is a very important program for horticulture development in the country, it proposed to invest around 1,700 crores. What it will be doing with this money? The government will be setting up, something which is very advanced in that we see in Indian context, right? This is generally, say, a revolutionary thing which the European countries do with reference to promoting virus-free, high-quality planting material to farmers, such as seeds, such as good quality seeds, and various amounts of, say, information that is important for the horticultural development, right? And this is done regardless of their land holding size or socio-economic status. So government is hand holding such farmers and helping them diversify. Also, certifications will be given to those farmers with reference to that they are using virus free, they are using this particular aspect here, right? And also infrastructure support to nurseries, right? With reference to various clean plant centers such as this. If you can see here, then you will be getting the idea what I'm talking about, right? These clean plant centers will be established with the collaboration of Indian Council of Agricultural Research for specific crops, right? So for example, in Pune, the CPC for grapes will be linked to National Research Center for Grapes, Pune. In Bengaluru, it will be catering to food crops such as mango, guava, dragon fruit, and avocado. As you can understand, these are exotic crops. These are exotic crops or fruits, we can say, right, which are extremely high in demand in the foreign markets too, apart from in Indian markets too, right? So in Nagpur, we'll be having citrus fruit. We know Nagpur is very famous for, citrus fruits. In Bikaner, it will be with reference to citrus fruits again. Srinagar, apple, almond, walnut, berries, etc. With reference to this, we can see the rest of the CPCs also will be promoting these special crops. So this is what Clean Plant Program is all about, right? Apart from this, we'll be also have so many agroclimatic zones, as we have understood. So this will be boosting the effort in this manner. So now this particular loan has been extended by the Asian Development Bank, and this will be supporting our Atmanirbhar Clean Plant Program here. And here we have to understand the most important thing about this loan is that it will be implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture, right? It will be implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture, and it will be also bringing into collaborations the various, scientific and research organizations which are working in the agriculture arena. As we can see, we have just seen, we have so many states and so many agriculture research institutes who will be promoting those exotic crops, those famous crops in their own climatic zones. And right, it will be also helping in the various institutional systems to implement CPP across the country, right? So we can actually spread this, we can actually help use the funding to help spread the mission spirit of this throughout the country. So these were all the things which were important here, and you let me know what is the answer of this in the comments below. So students, in the next topic, we are going to discuss about the outcomes of the 13th National Seed Congress. Now recently, the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare organized the National Congress for Seed, right? And we know that in agriculture, the seed is the most important ingredient when we talk about the productivity of our Indian agriculture. So we'll be seeing that the government of India time and again have so many initiatives for the same. In the comment section you can let me know 2-3 of the initiatives that you know of, but here we have some promotional initiatives, some initiatives to spread greater awareness of development of seed sector in the country, due to which we have this congress, which had the theme of innovation or innovating for a sustainable seed ecosystem. So we know that in the country we have various companies which produce seeds for our farmers. Later the farmers buy the seeds at various subsidized rates, and also they use the same in their agricultural productivity. And when we talk about, say, the future of the seed sector in the country, we need to develop better amount of seeds. In the green revolution, it was actually the high yielding variety seeds which made the green revolution possible. Now India, in its Amrit Kal, when it is trying to become a developed nation by 2047, right, that is 100 years of our independence. So within the same, we need greater amount of development when it comes to the agricultural productivity, because we know that a majority or say a substantial share of our GDP comes from this agricultural sector. So that is why going forward we need a green revolution 2.0 due to various issues in the agricultural sector, such as the issue of MSP, which always sparks debate. Also we need to transition away from MSP. We need a better amount of, say, investment in the biotechnical in aspect of our agricultural research, so that we can produce better amount of seeds. So here the focus, there has been various amounts of focus within this particular, say, congress meeting. So this is where we have 4 important highlights. Firstly, the policymakers underscored the importance to develop hybrid and bio-fortified crops. So this means that we need better amount of, say, genetic engineering, with which we can get rid of various genetic diseases, various, say, pest related aspects within the plants, so that we can have better innovative and novel techniques in seed production, and also research. Also, over a period of time, we know that in our country we have good amount of measures to ensure food security, right? So that is why we would want, say for example, we distribute rice, we distribute wheat, right? We want that, from a government perspective, we want whatever things we are distributing with reference to food grains to the needy people in the country, we would want better amount of fortification or enrichment of the food grains with vitamin A, with iron, so that issues such as malnutrition, hunger, and also anemia, which is quite prevalent in the country, they are gotten rid of. So that is why we need better amount of biofortified crops, which takes into factor the various crops that we distribute with reference to our ration shops, so they can be better equipped with vitamins and minerals. Also, when we talk about, say, the second agenda, we would want to create better amount of climate resilient measures for our agricultural sector, for which we need stress tolerant varieties of various crops. So this is also with reference to the developmental agenda of our government, where to fight climate change, we know the impact of extreme weather events such as heat waves, excessive rainfall or drought can cause the traditional crops to die off. That is why we need better amount of stress tolerant crops which will be resilient even with reference to the various malicious impact of climate change, right? Also, when we talk about, say, the breeding cycles of various crops, we know that there are particular seasons in which variety of crops can be grown. So we need better amount of cropping cycles, essentially less cycles or less time for the, say, crops to sow and to harvest. So that is the third agenda. Also, when we talk about the global south countries, such as the African nations, including the South Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, which are actually developing countries, or sometimes even the least developed countries. So that is where India can become a Vishwa Guru, right? So these are the policy wordings of our government, right, where we need to show the path for the rest of the global south countries too, where we can actually help them with reference to development in their agricultural sector. So these are the various outcomes that we have discussed as of now, right? So these are the various things that we have to keep in mind, following which we will be moving on to the next topic here. So here we have seen recently a recovery in the 8 core sectors of our economy. Now this is a very important a topic for upcoming prelims 2025 examination, because we know that in prelims generally we are concerned with the various factual details and also some of the analytical concepts too. So this is where let us start with this very static information. So index of industrial production will be starting with, because we know that the 8 core industries are actually, can be calculated from this, because it is having around 40% weightage from the IIP itself. So IIP is actually an indicator when it is actually trying to measure the changes in the volume of production of a basket of industrial products over a period of time. We have the manufacturing sector, we have electricity sector, right? We have various industrial activities in the country. So what we do, the government of India, they carry out a survey. That is, they go into each of those factories, they actually look into what are the volumes of production, and they compare according to the last month, according to a particular base year, how much the production has increased or decreased over a period of time, right? So it is actually trying to measure the growth of industrial sector in the country in simple terms. So generally it is classified in 2 aspects. Firstly, we have the broad sectors of mining, manufacturing and electricity, and a general industry too. So in this broad sectors we have this classification. In the used based sectors we have this classification, where the weightages are also mentioned, as you can see here, correct? So in this use based classification we are generally concerned with the amount of industrial growth that happened in production of primary goods, intermediate goods, capital goods, infrastructure construction goods, consumer durables and non-durables. So with this we can understand there is also certain amount of weightages associated. For example, with reference to primary goods, the weightage in the IIP is 34%. That is, this is the amount of importance that the index is giving to primary goods. So if at all the primary goods production increases, so we can actually see a substantial increase in the IIP too. On the other hand, we have this particular weightage attached to capital goods. That means if capital goods production is increasing or decreasing, it will be having obviously some impact on the overall IIP increase or decrease, but it will be on a lesser extent because of the varying amount of weightages. As you can see, this is the importance that we attach to a particular series here. So from a prelims perspective, what I want all of you to do right now, you can pause the video and you just look at the various use based sectors, and you try to arrange this thing in ascending and descending order in the comments, right? So these are the things that UPSC can ask you with reference to arranging these sectors in a particular order, right? When we talk about who is releasing this, it is done by the Central Statistical Organization under the MOSPI, right? And the base year is 2011-12, and we have to understand this is a monthly report which is given. So with reference to the same month last year, it is trying to figure out the production health of our country. That is also looking into how much over a period of time, or say in a matter of month, also comparing the month to the last year's month, our industry production has performed. Now, within the same, we have this particular index of 8 core industry. Please note that this was actually released by the MOSPI, the Central Statistical Organization, a organization within the MOSPI. Now, when we talk about the 8 core sectors, so this is a particular index which is released by the DPIIT, Office of the Economic Advisor, under the DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce, right? So for your reference, it is by the Office of Economic advisor under the DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, right? Now what is this looking at? It is actually composing around 40% to 40.2% of our, say, IIP, right? So what it is all looking at? It is looking at these commodities such as coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizer, steel, cement and electricity. Now in this particular aspect we have to keep in mind that these are the 8 core sectors. When I talk about core sectors, so these are sectors where we have the highest or say most volume of production compared to the other sectors too. We have so many other sectors of our industrial activity, but apart from all those things, these are the 8 sectors where we see the highest volume of industrial production. So that is why we thought of creating a separate index altogether by the Ministry of Commerce, who thought of looking at the various status of production here. And also when we talk about the DPIIT is also looking at what would be the trends or patterns of investments required, and if at all we also need FDIs, right? So it is also looking into whether our performance is good or not. Accordingly, how investment decisions will be also be made in this particular sector. So this is a very important say particular index when we talk about our economy, right? And here also the base year is 2011-12. Correct. So according to the say base year, we have to measure the same. When we talk about say the amount of sectors and the weightages attached to them, so please note down this order. We have firstly the most important say weightage attached to a particular sector here. It is the refinery products. Then after refinery products we have electricity, steel, coal, crude oil, natural gas, cement and fertilizers, right? So this is the order in which we have say the weightages attached. So from top to bottom we can actually talk about this is a decreasing order, that is from highest weightage to the lowest weightage, right? So this is also important for prelims because UPSC loves to ask questions based on weightages of IIP, weightages of CPI, WPI and so on. So that is why I thought of clarifying this. And also when we talk about say the recent recovery, why the same took place, we can understand that as of October 2024, right, we have seen a recent recovery, that is a recent growth, a core sector growth of around 3.1%. So this is generally attributed to the greater amount of say industrial activity in the coal sector, in the refinery products, right? Generally right now also we see the crude oil prices are on a declining trajectory. So if the prices are same, prices are reducing over a period of time, the domestic manufacturers or say domestic suppliers of crude oil, they can actually have a higher profit. In this context, we'll be also seeing later the concept of windfall taxes, right? Windfall gain tax, which was recently abolished in the country. Also on the other side, we see the steel sector is performing well, the cement sector and also electricity and fertilizers are performing marginally well. So these are all the things where we need to keep this thing in mind. While I want to clarify that these monthly comparisons are not important. It is just for our reference. It is just for our awareness because we are future officers, right? We need to be aware of the pulse of our economy. So if we are not aware of what are the changes which are happening, will we not be able to make decisions in the present, right? But when we talk about the exam point of view, here generally who is releasing the index, what is the base year, what are the weightages, the ascending descending order of the weightages, these are the important things, right? And that is why the MCQ is also on the same. You solve this in the comments and you let me know, and with reference to the overall picture of our industrial growth, we would want to consult the economic survey that will be releasing later this month. So the industrial growth or the data within the same, within the say economic survey, they will be extremely important from an exam point of view, because that is actually reflecting the annual trends of our say inflation, of our industry, of the various indices that the government is using for its own purpose. So we'll be moving on now to the next one. Now recently Sanjay Malhotra has been appointed as a new RBI governor. He was actually an IAS officer working at the Ministry of Finance. So all our viewers who aspire to become IAS officers in the future, so they are actually potential RBI governors also, right? So with this, I want to motivate all of you that be your domain, be your subject expertise. It is always your talent which will be helping you scale the heights of your career in the future. So that is why it is always a benefit to have a variety of knowledge regarding variety of subjects, right? Because our own say RBI governor right now, he was an UPSC aspirant at point of time. He studied economics, right? So that is why maybe he was interested with the same, and he chose his direction in the say services, in the bureaucracy, in such a way that right now he is holding such a prestigious position, right? So in this one, we'll be just discussing very factual information, right? Nothing to say scratch our heads with concepts here. For our prelims, we need to be aware of the appointment process of the RBI governor and also the qualification criteria, right? Firstly, let us understand the qualification criteria for the people or the candidates who want to become the RBI governor, right? So when we talk about RBI governor, this was actually a PYQ, or say in 2021 prelims, there was a question regarding that the RBI governor is a constitutional say dignitary, right? So that is not correct, because we have to understand it is according to the RBI Act 1934 provisions that we have the position of the RBI governor, but this act is not mentioning any specific qualification for the governor, right? In essential, there are some general qualifications. For example, the particular person must be a citizen of India and should be between the age of 40 to 60 years, right? And also the person should be possessing at least 20 years of experience in banking, finance, economics or related sectors. So that is why we can understand here not only IAS officers, we have had seen various PhD in economics, in finance, also various professors from eminent institutions. Also we have the example of Raghuram Rajan, right, who was also the RBI governor at one point of time. Also we have so many distinguished officers of our country who served as the RBI governor in the past. So that is why we see that we must be having 20 years of experience. So people here, right, aspirants here, serve 20 years in the government, you also have a chance to become the RBI governor, right? And also must have held a senior leadership role within prominent banking institutions, financial institutions or reputable academic institutions, right? So these are the things which we have, but we do not have any specific qualification. Achha. Now when we have understood this, now we need to look into how they are appointed in real life. So when we talk about the appointment, RBI governor is appointed in the provisions of the RBI Act. So this is important. It is not under the Constitution of India, right? So it is not a constitutional, say, position that we are talking of here. Also, when we talk about the Financial Sector Regulation Appointment Search Committee, it is consisting of a the cabinet secretary, right? Current RBI governor, Financial Services Secretary, and 2 independent members who will be preparing a list of the potential candidates to be appointed as the RBI governor. Next, the shortlisted candidates are interviewed, right? Then again, you will have to prepare for another interview, right? And this will be sent to the Cabinet Committee on Appointments, right? So we have the Cabinet Committee on Appointments involved here, which is then headed by the Prime Minister. Then once the cabinet committee and the various discussions which will be taking there, right, approves the candidate, the appointment is then confirmed by the central government. It is not by the RBI, it is by the central government. Then the RBI governor is appointed for a term not exceeding 5 years with the possibility of extension also of also reappointment by the central government. This happened with our just RBI governor who just retired, that is a Shaktikanta Das, right? His term was also extended for a period of which was actually decided by the central government. So these were all the important things that I wanted to convey you. Now we'll be moving on to what are the main important functions of the RBI governor. See, obviously the RBI, right, as a central bank of our country, it's entrusted with say safeguarding the healthy macroeconomical indicators of our country. Apart from this, we also have, say, the twin objectives of RBI to fight inflation and also balancing economic growth on the same side. So this is where we need to keep in mind the same functions of the RBI falls on the governor too, right? So now we'll be moving on to the next one. The National Highway Authority of India has recently launched Rajmarg Sathi. Now this is actually a form of incident management system, right? This is a form of incident management system. What is this all about? It is about safeguarding the various infrastructure facilities on the highway, such as safeguarding the roads, safeguarding the safety features of the road, and also looking into how we can enhance the quality of highway experience in the country. So what happens is that, on the highways, we need effective patrolling system, right? So we have various vehicles like this who patrol the highway for various reasons, right? That is actually known as route patrolling vehicles. Now they will be rebranded as Rajmarg Sathi, which will be equipped with advanced tools to reduce the traffic disruption and for better maintenance. And also we have understood that these particular vehicles will be having dashboard cameras. As we can see here, there are various cameras installed within the same, and also the cameras are capable of synthesizing with artificial intelligence to have better amount of video analytics. And also whatever data that we are getting via the cameras, via the scanning of, say, these vehicles on the highways, we will be using the data on the NHAI-1 application. This is a very innovative application by the NHAI, which is trying to improve the user experience on our highways, right? And this is actually a way in which we can also detect various cracks, potholes on our highways too, right? And here the captured this data, whatever data that we get here, it will be, say, compiled weekly and will be integrated again in the NHAI-1 app, correct? So this is all about, say, increasing the ease of convenience on the highways. Also in a previous topic, we looked into how NHAI is trying to improve the motorability of the highways too. So with this, you let me know what is the answer of this in the comments below. Now this initiative is a very, very innovative one, and it is actually touted to solve the food security say debate or say issues in the country, because India is right now focused on creating world's largest grain storage plant, and the government is doing in such a way that we couldn't have ever imagined. So this is actually falling under those best practices of the government of India for delivering governance for our people, that is providing last mile connectivity of goods and services for our people. Now the idea is very innovative here. It is about involving the cooperative banks, or say those cooperative banks which are closest to the people. Actually, when we talk about the cooperative banks, we have, when we talk about the rural short-term credit giving cooperative banks, we have the state cooperative banks, we have the district cooperative banks, and at the grassroots level, we have the primary agricultural credit societies. So primary agricultural credit societies extend credits to its members. And in India, we have, a vast network of PSAs at the ground level. You can go to any village in the country and it will be very difficult for you to not find a PSAs there. So PSAs is actually that institution It is a bank essentially which is trying to lend to its members at the grassroots level, generally for short-term purposes, for buying seeds, for buying fertilizers, for even non-farm needs of our farmers. And also spreading financial awareness, literacy, and also financial inclusion services such as credit facilities to the MSMEs, such as various extending loans, and also distributing insurance to the farmers. So these are the day-to-day functions that the PACS do at the very local level. Now, recently a pilot project has been launched, right? A pilot project has been launched to serve as the world's largest grain storage plan, where in the cooperative sectors, godowns have been created directly adjacent to a PACS. For example, say if you can look at this, say grain storage building or say warehouse here, maybe just behind that wall we have the PACS, that is the normal banking staff dealing with money, dealing with loans, dealing with their clients. So this building is the bank building itself, the PACS building itself, where in this building we have the facility to store our grains. Also, this is not the entire picture, because maybe outside this wall we also have the fair price shop, that is our ration shop, right? For example, if you need any ration under the National Food Security Act, right? If you need the ration under this particular provision, you just go to the fair price shop, the ration shop, and the ration shop people will be collecting your grain from the warehouse itself and will be delivering it to you, right? And also when we talk about, say, utilizing the say space and facilities of the PACS, this is the best way possible, correct? Where we have to understand this is the plan which is right now been implemented by National Cooperative Development Corporation, the NABARD, and the NABARD Consultancy Services, who are creating this grand plan. So let me repeat again. For example, say this is a particular building of PACS, right? This is a PACS where we have the normal, say, money lending, deposit facilities, right? We have MSME loans, we have insurance, and all the other banking, say, services that they do generally, right? Behind the same only we'll be having a particular godown. Behind the PCS we will be having the godown where grains will be stored, right? And where the grains will be coming from, another innovative measure here is that the farmers, for example, a farmer has grown wheat. The farmer can directly go to the PACS instead of going to the mandi right now, or instead going to the Food Corporation of India. The farmer can say that, okay, the PACS has opened a godown. I'll be going to the godown and sell my wheat at what price? At the market price? No. At MSP. At the MSP, the farmers will be selling the crop to the PACS so that the farmer can feel assured that, okay, I will not be investing in transportation and whatever the other costs are there to supply the wheat to the mandis. I can directly go to my PACS, which I frequently go in a month or two to maybe withdraw money. So after my harvest, I can go to the same, I can collect my, say, produce, right, at MSP, and the grains will be stored in the godown. And for example, there are various families who require the ration system here. They can go to the godown because there is also a fair price shop, correct? So by going to this, they will be also availing of the various, say wheat and rice that are entitled to under the National Food Security Act. So we can understand how the government, NABARD, and the rest of the institutions has transformed a grassroots level financial institution into a food security measure, and also having linkages with the farmers too. So here we see so many things happening at the same time. Firstly, they are doing financial inclusion. Secondly, they are storing the grains, hence lessening the burden on the Food Corporation of India, because we know that the Food Corporation of India is already burdened with so many activities of storing the grains, transporting the grains, seeking money from the, say, government of India, and also distributing the same to the state government, carrying auctions, whatnot. The Food Corporation of India can actually sit back and relax because the PACS are storing for them. Also, the state governments can also sit and relax because the existing, or say the increasing amount of pressure on the ration shops can now be relieved a little because they are also serving as ration, say, shops. So it is a out of the mind, it is an out of the box idea that has been thought of, correct, where the PSCs will be working as procurement sectors by the farmer, right, for state agencies and also for Food Corporation of India. Obviously the Food Corporation of India will be looking into how the grains are being stored at the godowns. In a scientific way, everything will be maintained, right? Also, they will be operating as fair price shops or ration shops, so that here state governments can also appoint their own, say, people here for the grain distribution thing. Also, this particular PSCs can also serve as a custom hiring centers and general processing units for sorting, grading of food grains in the country. So we understand that we can actually use this local institution, grassroots institution, in a variety of ways. Also, the farmers can avail bridge finance for the next cycle of crop, or say, if the farmers are facing a shortage of funds from their side, they can actually seek finance from the PSCs itself, right? And those particular crops for which they have sought finance for, they can actually sell them to the PSCs in the next cycle at MSP. So here the income security of the farmers are also taken care of. So it depends now on how well this is implemented, and I will be keeping a very close track on this operation of the same, because it's a very innovative measure, and if at all it is spread to all of the districts and all of the villages in the, say, country, it will be a game-changing agency here, correct? And also when we talk about, say, the various, say, initiative here and the interest subsidies which are given here, these are given through two important mechanisms. Firstly, we have the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, right, which was launched during the COVID, right? And here within the same we establish this Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. So a part of finance will be given out of this fund. Let me just give you the very basics, or say static information here. So this will be, when it was launched, this was envisaged as a 1 lakh crore scheme to be given for boosting the agriculture in the infrastructure at the farm gate and post-harvest mechanisms, right? Be it with different supply chain services such as e-market platforms, warehouses, silos, pack house, assaying units, cold chain, sorting, grading units, logistics, transportation. So whatever the infrastructure is related to farming in the country, and say building a proper long-term infrastructure, this 1 lakh crore corpus will be funding for the same, right? When we talk about further details, we understand that the pattern of finance is such that all loans, right, to have interest subventions to for at around 3% per annum. For example, say if you go to any PSCs as a farmer, the PSCs will be telling that you have to give me, if you are taking any loan, you just give me an interest of 10%. Now the farmer will be telling that I am boosting my infrastructure, such as I am building a new cold storage unit, that is why I am requiring this loan, and according to this particular government scheme, I will be subjected to a discount of 3%, or the discount name is interest subvention, right? That means that 10% will be becoming now 7%. So this 3% cost will be borne by the government of India out of this 1 lakh crore, right? So per annum it will be a limit subjected to 2 crore rupees for a maximum period of 7 years. Why 7 years? Because we are building long-term infrastructure. So let the people build the infrastructure, have, say, proper amount of returns from the same, and later over a long period of time they can pay back the money. And also whatever the credit guarantee, right, for a loan that is up to 2 crores, right, this entire thing, the coverage for the fees and everything will be done by the government. In case the entity which is taking the loan is a farmer producer organization, right, the credit guarantee can be availed from the facility under the FPO promotion scheme, right, of the Department of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, right? And all scheduled commercial banks, scheduled cooperative banks, RRBs, small finance banks, NBFCs, and also National Cooperative Development Corporation are eligible to give this particular loan, right? So this was actually one part of this funding that the government is using from this scheme. There is another scheme known as Agriculture Marketing Infrastructure, right, which is actually trying to develop a agricultural marketing infrastructure itself. So how to market the agriculture, to how to develop the mandis, how to have proper amount of storage systems for horticulture, for dairy, poultry and everything. This is about boosting the agriculture marketing scenario. It is also trying to promote innovative and latest technologies within the same. So here we understand that the government will be providing a subsidy of 33% to the PSCs for constructing storage units under the AMI scheme, correct? So these are the two schemes which is making this bridge finance possible for the farmers, and that is what brings us to the end of this part 1. So all the best. Do watch the part 2 now to have the coverage of the next articles. Thank you. All the best. Best of luck.